Hello everyone and welcome back to the Famiboards Discussion Club, a podcast formed by the Famiboards community. Today we're going to be talking about the recent announcements in the Dual Indie World and Partner Showcase Direct, as well as some of the more recent information to come out about The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. If you'd like to join the discussion as well, please be sure to visit this podcast companion thread on Famiboards.com. I'm WestEgg and I'm once again joined by Irene.
Hi everyone.
VolcanicDynamo.
Welcome to September, one of the best months of the year.
Amen.
Yeah, I agree with that, actually. And a special guest joining us for the first time, Derachi.
Oh, is it September already? Oh my goodness.
It is September as of when we started recording this, so look forward to fall, everyone.
I'm already...
Zelda month. Zelda month.
Zelda month.
Isn't Zelda month usually November for, like, YouTubers and stuff?
I mean, they usually come out in November, right? So that makes sense. But
yeah, because they're, like, the holiday games.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Nintendo wanted to give a birthday gift to me this year, and they chose The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, so I'm going to take it.
Fair enough. That is a great birthday gift.
Yeah.
Alright, so what's everyone been playing lately?
A lot.
A lot. Awesome. That's a good answer.
Yeah, I have like 5 or 6 ongoing games, and I play like 10 minutes of one, 10 minutes of one, 10 minutes of one, 10 minutes of one. It's like a lot of stuff. There's Until Then, there's Final Fantasy 16, Last of Us Part 1, But if I have to pick one game to talk a little bit about during the podcast, because I want to like tell people about this existence, it's not very known. It's a little game called Blue Reflection. Anyone heard of it?
I haven't.
The name sounds familiar.
I don't... yeah, it sounds familiar, but I don't think I could place it.
Yeah. Listen to the elevator pitch of this game. This game is gay Persona.
Okay.
Finally!
Okay. Keep
At
going.
last.
Keep going.
Yeah, you play as like there's like an all-female high school sim basically. Then I'm playing the second game. There's 2 games, and in the second game there's like it's not like the first game is like a straight up high school sim. The second game is like a couple of girls are stranded in a high school with like no memories, and then they have to regain their memories. But it's so cute and it's so adorable, and I'm so in love with it because it's very Persona in the way that because Persona kind of popularized the concept with like you have the daily life stuff, and then you go into dungeons and do turn-based encounter stuff in like a special dimension. Yeah, I've fallen head over heels for this because the characters are so great and it's so adorable because you go into the like dungeon area and you gather like food and then you cook food. And when you do the cooking food, all the girls in your party are like doing the super nice cooking animation, kind of like, in Zelda when you're cooking and Link is whistling and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this. It's like that stuff on crack because you're like clicking the craft button and it's like and I'm like, wow, this is an all-timer.
Nice.
I'm really enjoying it. The combat is very cool. It's very fast-paced, and it's like based on a timeline, even though it's turn-based. And characters are great. The vibe of it, like I always look for vibes in games. When a vibe is something that's really hard to describe, but when you're playing a game, you can feel the vibe, and the vibe in this game has like this adorable but slightly melancholic vibe to it, and then you can go on dates with each other, and then you go on school and have around the school and have conversations, and it's just like, yeah, I like this game a lot.
That's very cool. If you don't mind me asking, so this is like, I assume, does it have like an anime aesthetic, or is it like a different kind of art style?
Yeah, has a very anime aesthetic. It's made by Gust, who is the developers of the Atelier series. So this is like their side hustle game, I guess, or like one of their lesser knowns, like games that are not Atelier sort of.
Okay, and you said you're playing the second one?
Yeah, Second Light. Yeah.
Okay.
Second Light is about.
Is there only the 2 of them so far?
Yeah, there's only 2 games. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I would love for a third game to come on and flesh, because they are they're really good, but they are kind of rough around their edges, and it would be a really cool idea to have a third game to flesh it out a bit more. So that's like one of my wish list for a future game release someday, sometime.
Well, if we can get a new Famicom Detective Club, there's hope for you yet.
Yeah. Sometimes there are these game releases that makes you go that, okay, if that game could come out, then this game can come out. And if Famicom Detective Club fans can get the MEO game, then I can possibly get a third Blue Reflection game and an Astro Chain sequel while we're at it.
Listen, I think we're going to get into this later. We're going to get into this later in the episode, but some video game dream releases have been coming up, so keep your fingers crossed.
Speaking of, besides, what have you been playing, Derachi?
We'll get into the Direct Indie Worlds combo show now in a little bit, but one of the things announced there was the Castlevania DS collection, and so I took it upon myself to play some Castlevania games, but not the DS ones. I decided to go back and play the very first collection they put out, which is the NES, Famicom, and Super Famicom games. So I've been playing through the old Castlevania games. I played through 1, 3, and I actually just finished 4 this morning. Because I had never played them before, and I was like, I should probably play these. And that feeling when there's a game that's like everyone calls it a classic, and it's like, oh, it's talked about with such high regard, and then you go and play it, and your first thought is just like, oh, I'm mad at myself for not playing this sooner. That's the feeling I've been having. Because these games they're so chunky, and it's weird. I want to describe them as like chunky and thick, like a nice big soup, because the character moves so slowly, but the whip animation is like so satisfying, and it fills me with joy every time I just whip a dude from, far enough away, just the perfect distance. And the platforming, it feels slow, and there's that really annoying knockback where every time you get hit, you go back a certain distance, but I don't know. It's chunky, but I really like the feel of it, and I'm having a lot of fun.
One day I'll go back and finish the rest of the Castlevania games. I finished the first one twice, and I've always been meaning to play beyond the first one, and then I don't.
I cannot recommend Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse enough, though. If you have the Classics collection on Switch, play the Japanese version. Yeah. Because from what I understand, it's a little more balanced. It's a little more like systematically tight. Because apparently the US version, they didn't like the rental market, so they made the game way too hard.
And the music's better too.
Oh, the music on the Japanese version is so good.
Those exclusive Japanese enhancement chips that make all the tracks, but I gotta take advantage of that.
You been playing anything new, Volcanic?
Not exactly new, but if you remember our discussion from the last podcast, you might remember that I've been playing an indie game called Kitsune Tales, which released at the beginning of August, and I just finished it yesterday. Not 100%, but I did end up reaching credits yesterday or the day before. Actually, I think it was the day before. And yeah, it's a very Mario-like 2D platformer, particularly very similar to Super Mario Bros. 3. A lot of the finer nuances of the Mario style are preserved in this game. So a lot of the controls and the feeling are very similar to 2D Mario. The power-up system works nearly the same. The maps work very similarly. And while I don't think it reaches the highs of a Mario game, I mean, come on, it's not even a fair comparison. Like, Mario's games have extremely high budgets compared to indie teams, so that's not necessarily a reasonable expectation. Without getting too much into spoilers, I think the things that ended up hooking me the most about Kitsune Tales are when it goes into its more original directions with some of its storytelling and mechanics choices. Some of those things are not necessarily going to be clear until you play a significant chunk of the game, so I will just slightly say that I recommend the title, but if things feel maybe a little rote, I'd say try to stick through it for a good chunk of it, and then I think you might be pleasantly surprised near the end.
Nice.
Yeah. I'll have to look into it. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, it's on PC right now, but it is going to be coming to consoles early next year.
Indie platformers make the world go round.
They make my heart sore.
As far as games I've been playing, it hasn't changed too much since last time. I'm still playing through Xenoblade 3. I'm trying to mop up all the Hero Ascension quests, and that is like just a massive beast of a task. And then I've still been playing the college football game, and since real college football has started now, I'm kind of in that mindset of this is what I'm doing now. So,
Are you planning on continuing on to Future Redeemed?
yes, I am going to continue to Future Redeemed, because I actually have not played Future Redeemed yet. I had already played Xenoblade 3.
Same.
But I'm excited for that, because I know it's... I don't want to spoil, but I know elements that are in it that I'm really looking forward to seeing.
It's weird that I haven't played it, because considering how much I adore Xenoblade 3. It's just kind of like fallen by the wayside because life is happening, and basically there was a lot of games I was planning on playing and looking forward to playing, then Tears of the Kingdom came and swept the plate clean. So yeah, someday I really want to pick up Future Redeemed, because yeah, I've also heard fantastic things about it. Everyone says that, comparing it to Torna, and Torna also has a very good reputation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so to kind of start us off, we did have a question from Chocolate Supra. I believe this was actually just a thread that you had posted, Irene, on Famiboards.
Yeah, it was.
But so do y'all think the Switch will end up having a better 2D trinity of Mario, Zelda, Metroid than the SNES? And looks like he's comparing Mario Wonder, Echoes of Wisdom, and Dread versus Mario World, Link to the Past, and Super. So I haven't read that thread, so I'll hold on to some of my thoughts, because my thoughts are probably going to be unoriginal versus what's been discussed. But yeah, we can go ahead and open that up.
All right. This is honestly a really difficult question, because I think because the 2D trilogy on both systems have been extremely high quality and have brought back a lot of the spark and creativity that I think a lot of people were looking for in these titles. Wonder compared to the new Super Mario Bros. Series, Echoes of Wisdom, even compared to, the last 2D Zelda was a remake, and the previous one before that was very heavily inspired by A Link to the Past, as amazing as it was. And Dread existing versus having nothing since Fusion besides remakes, I think there's a lot of great energy with that. I think the tricky thing, though, is that Mario World, Link to the Past, and Super Metroid are so high quality, so fundamental to their franchise's identities, and so well aged that it's really hard to go and say, oh, this new trilogy of games is better, right? I guess I might prefer the feel of Dread to Super, but it's hard for me to call Dread a better game than Super. I haven't played Echoes of Wisdom at all yet, because it hasn't come out, and it might be better than A Link to the Past, but A Link to the Past codified a lot of what we would consider the modern Zelda formula, even before Ocarina of Time did. So that comes into play, right? And then Super Mario World is still one of my favorite games ever, might be my favorite game ever. And Wonder's always going to have a hard time with that, even if it is an excellent time and was my favorite game released last year. So my gut feeling is that on a historical standpoint, the SNES trilogy is probably going to be still considered better, but if someone tried to argue that any of the individual games in the Switch lineup was better, I would listen to that argument and be willing to agree with it, at least in part.
I could not have said it better myself. I really think, like, those three Super Nintendo games are just so core to, like, video games in terms of design and historical significance that I think, honestly, it speaks volumes to the quality of Wonder and Dread, and I assume Echoes of Wisdom. The game's not out, we haven't played it. Like, it speaks volumes to their quality that this conversation can happen at all. Because it's like comparing them to these stone cold classic games And I totally agree. Like, in the grand scheme of things, 30 years from now, 30 years removed from now, will we talk about Wonder, Echoes of Wisdom, and Dread the same way we talk about World, Link to the Past, and Super Metroid now? We'll see. But the fact, I think, that you can compare the current games to those games at all, like, this is a conversation we can have. I think even if the newer games don't stand the test of time like those Super Nintendo games did, I think it speaks volumes to their quality that we're having this conversation. And I think that means a lot in and of itself.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I think about that question, it's like, I'm like, okay, Switch is awesome. Wonder is a 10 out of 10. Dread is like, not a personal 10 out of 10 for me, but Dread is extremely good. And Echoes of Wisdom is gonna absolutely smash it and be like an instant Zelda classic. And like, oh, Switch is so good. But then you think about SNES and be like, those 3 games are also extremely good still after all these years.
I recently replayed Super Metroid, and like it's shocking how well that game holds up. Like, Super Metroid is like, you play it now and you're like, oh, you see the bones of like a lot of modern, because like obviously the Metroidvania genre has blown up, especially among indies in the last handful of years. And you go play Super Metroid and you're like, oh, this is like the Rosetta Stone of all of those games. Like, you look at this and you're like, this is everything that modern games are still like taking bits and pieces of today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from a historical point of view, it's like those 3 games are immutable to influencing what came after them. But if we're trying to remove the historical element, even if we remove the historical element, it's like Mario World, which is my favorite 2D Mario game, or like Mario Advance 2 is actually my favorite 2D Mario game, but same stuff, technically. And I think Super Metroid is like preferable to me for Dread. I think Echoes of Wisdom is going to, like, I'm talking individually now, Echoes of Wisdom is gonna be preferable to me from A Link to the Past. But what strikes me when I compare them, like from a pure game design perspective, is that the Super Nintendo games are much more exploratory, I feel, almost. If you compare, like, Dread has like a more streamlined and linear approach to it, whereas in Super Metroid, once you do the initial loop and you end up back where you started with the speedy boost blocks, you're like, okay, now I'm completely lost and I have the entire map to myself and can just go wherever the heck I want. Whereas Wonder, and compared to World, is like, Wonder is all about the wonder flowers and the individual quirks of every level, whereas Super Mario World, you have the secret exits that takes you to like these wild secret places that you had no idea even existed. So I feel World is much more exploratory focused and more focused around the world map than Wonder, which is more level focused. So they definitely have a different approach, and like Echoes of Wisdom looks like it's gonna be much more free form than A Link to the Past. A Link to the Past was clearly also a step more in the linear direction if you compare to Zelda 1, for example. But that, to me, is like what stands out much as the difference. But that's where it gets interesting for me, because nothing is really preferable to the other. It's not like, oh, free-form exploration is much more better than linearity. It's like, no, it's more like 2 different approaches to the same design principles, almost. So then it becomes almost like a preferential argument, where I have been flowering it out for a bit, but to answer the question honestly and directly, the only thing I can say is, I don't know, really.
I'm about to have some takes.
Yeah,
here we go.
Takes?
Here we go.
Give us the takes. Give us the takes.
Okay, so I should preface this by saying I have never actually owned a Super Nintendo until I owned the SNES Mini, if that counts.
I think so.
I grew up in a Genesis household, in fact.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I went from NES to Genesis to N64. And so my perception on a lot of SNES games comes well after they were, I don't want to say outdated, but well after they'd been established and like whatnot. So the first time I played A Link to the Past was actually on the Game Boy Advance on that re-release. The first time I had played World, I think, was actually on I was maybe the Wii Virtual Console, and then Super I had played not too long before I played Dread, and I had already in the game I had played before that was the 3DS remake of 2. So I honestly think all of the SNES games hold up extremely well, and I think they do hold up better than I believe the Switch games are going to. And I loved the Switch games, but here's the thing with okay, so Wonder was a great game. I think it's a very spectacle-based game, and I think that lends itself to being most memorable on your first playthrough as a result. So it's not a game that I see myself replaying as often as some of the other platformers, which I think have a bit more of a gameplay challenge focus. Like, yeah, the last world, the last bit of it, like the optional stuff of Wonder is very difficult. But I think I still prefer, like, Mario 3, which is my favorite Mario platformer, or World, or what is actually the best SNES Mario game, Yoshi's Island. But
I can agree with that.
Is that with or without going for 100%?
Without. I'm not going for 100% in Yoshi's Island. But I just think all of the SNES games listed are fundamentally solid, and they're kind of the apex of that style before we started going over to 3D development. So it's kind of like this weird high mark in video game development that in many ways still really stands the test of time. Like, I think Link to the Past is a nearly perfect game. I think it's better than A Link Between Worlds. And I know that's not everyone's opinion. So I guess this is a long-winded way of saying I think the SNES trilogy holds up better for me, even though I greatly respect the Switch games. I mean, assumedly all greatly respect Echoes of Wisdom. I haven't actually played it yet. And I definitely enjoyed Dread, but I see myself replaying Super before I replay Dread. So yeah, I'm going with the SNES trilogy.
I totally agree with the spectacle comment, because like now, VolcanicDynamo, please don't kill me, but like I thought Wonder was like really good, but like I agree that it felt like it felt a little more like I was on a roller coaster, where it's like, yeah, I'm strapped in and I'm kind of watching a thing happen around me, but the part where I'm actually playing it is like, yeah, it's good. Like, don't get me wrong, but it's definitely like a little less mechanically like I am in control of Mario, and a little more like the level's kind of pushing Mario along, if that makes any sense. Dread, I feel almost the same way, where like it's a little more, Irene, like you said, like linear. Like it's like, yeah, it's an open world, but the game is definitely funneling you into where you got to go next. Where in Super, it's like, it's open, go nuts. And I don't think there's like, for me personally, there's not a qualitative difference, but there's definitely like a feel difference between the SNES games and the modern games. And I definitely see where you're coming from, WestEgg, that like, I think the older games are going to maybe continue to age like wine. And, you know, again, we'll see how we feel in 30 years about the Switch games. But I definitely think there are some points in the SNES game's favor in that regard.
Now, if we were talking the 3D trilogies, I think I don't even need Metroid Prime 4 to say that the Switch has already won. Yeah, straight
100%.
up.
Yeah, I agree too.
Are you saying like versus like Ocarina 64 and like what are the 3D trilogy, like the older 3D trilogy?
I think Irene's thread, because Irene did a 2D and a 3D thread. I think she mentioned
Yeah.
both N64 and GameCube as the options. Yeah. And
what I was going for is that the 3D, like the 3D equivalent to the SNES trilogy is like considered 64, Ocarina of Time, and Metroid Prime, because the first 3D entries in every.
Which
that's what I meant to the GameCube too. But also, to me, it also makes sense to compare to both 64 and GameCube, simply because the Switch has more 3D games than 64.
I will hold my thoughts on that, but maybe we should come back to that for future things. That's fascinating to me. I'd want to collect more thoughts.
Maybe once Prime 4 finally releases.
Yeah, that's a good call, actually.
I was going to say...
Bookmark the question.
Bookmark that one. I was going to say, it's a little unfair right now, because as it stands right now, the 3D Metroid game on the new console, I would count as Metroid Prime Remastered, and that's a great game, but it's also the exact same game as the 3D game from the old console, so it's like, we'll see when Prime 4 drops.
2 out of 3 still, I mean, that's pretty good.
I tend to agree, though, like, listen, I'm Super Mario Odyssey is one of the best feeling video games ever made. It's going to be hard to top it. But again, maybe Prime 4 is the greatest video game ever made. We'll see.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into the actual direct, the Indie World and Partner Showcase kind of duology. There were a few standout announcements which we're going to give some attention to, but I did want to ask, aside from basically Yakuza and Tokimeki Memorial, which is what I've kind of outlined as the big ones, what were your highlights of just either show?
From the indie world, I think the game that stood out to me the most was Peglin. Like,
Yeah.
Such a silly little concept for a game, where it's like this sort of, or you just have these like, it's roguelike fantasy pachinko. That is so funny to me, and it looks really well done and like lovingly crafted.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm potentially interested in, right? Pico Park 2 also sounded intriguing. Gave me a lot of sort of co-op platformer box boy almost vibes. But also, there's a Pico Park 1, I guess, that I completely missed that I'm going to have to check out. Oops.
Yep. Same.
And then from the main direct, Tetris Forever. Digital Eclipse makes fantastic compilations of retro stuff that focus both on accurate emulation and preserving the history of these games through providing materials and interviews and all that stuff. And it seems that the Tetris Forever collection is upholding to the same standard, so that's really great. We got more Capcom Fighting Collection. I've never played Power Stone. I want to try Power Stone, so that's really cool. Let's see, what else? The thing with this direct is that... Oh, and of course the aforementioned Castlevania DS collection. I think the thing that mostly stands out to me about this direct is how much old stuff there was in it. You know? Lots of ports. Lots of re-announcements. A lot of great sets of ports. I mean, we're gonna have gonna have a whole section talking about a very heavily requested port that ended the direct. But yeah, lots of old stuff.
I think you about covered it as far as what I had thought. I think it's hilarious that they had just announced Marvel vs. Capcom, and the fighting game community rejoiced heavily. And then in the immediate next direct, they announced another Capcom Fighting Collection with Capcom vs. SNK, and that was like almost as big. And so the community rejoiced again. And somehow like Nintendo Directs are becoming like just like very hyped for the FGC, which is funny to me.
Yeah, for sure.
Still waiting on my Marvel vs. Capcom pre-order. A little sad that it's not going to come in September because I want the physical, but also I'm going to acknowledge that I probably won't have time to play Marvel vs. Capcom in September. I'll be too busy with other games in Zelda. I still have to play the Famicom Detective Club games so I can play Emio. So
when does the physical for the Marvel collection drop?
November.
I want to say November.
Yeah, November 22nd.
Oh, great! So that gives you about a month to play Yakuza Kiwami as well. But we'll get to that.
Yep.
My personal highlight. I definitely was more impressed by the indie world than the partner showcase, and not because I'm like ports. I not really, but mostly because I just love indie worlds in general, because indie worlds has a tendency to showcase like cool new ideas. Like I always get so hyped on like just a cute new gameplay concept, and sometimes in indie worlds those things just sprout out of the ground. Like, so there's a few highlights for me from the indie world. As you mentioned, Peggle looked really cool. Just like hey, it's a pachinko rogue, and it's just a cool gameplay concept that sprouts out of nowhere, and you're pointing and like, that's neat, and possibly it's a shadow drop so you can play it the same day. And then there was Date Everything, which got me laughing a little bit. Also because it's like taking the dating sim and elevating it to like 100% meme status, and they have a text box that you can date, and it's ridiculous, and I love it. And then of course I also thought it was really cool that Balatro got like 100 DLC collaborations. I really love it when hit indie games are like, hey, we're a hit, come and cooperate with us. And like the most random of IPs are like, okay, we're gonna we're gonna throw like, I mean, for Witcher it's made perfect sense because Witcher had Gwent,
yeah.
so that's a perfect match really for Balatro. But I just thought it was really cool to have that show up and start the direct. And I also really liked the look of Coffee Talk Tokyo. Was a really cool announcement too. As far as the main direct go, for me the partner direct kind of came and went a bit. The only thing that stood out for me personally was the Atelier game. I just thought it looked really cool, but overall I was not too impressed with the partner showcase and more hyped on the indie world. But really looking forward to more indie worlds, of course, because it's I'm just glad in general that Nintendo are doing those and making these giving these awesome new ideas some spotlight.
I definitely agree. The indie world shows are always showcases of like cool creative ideas that you look at and you're like, oh, like that's interesting, like that's such a neat idea. And it's always cool to see Nintendo of all companies being like, look at these indies, because you don't see Sony doing that, you don't see Microsoft or anyone else doing that. I guess like there's like other showcases of indie games, but for Nintendo to come out and be like, look at these indie games, it's like, yeah, that's kind of like a nice refreshing creative set of game ideas kind of shown all in one place.
Yeah, and sometimes also with developers chiming in and be like, hello, here's our game. Like they have like the Neva developers showing up, and it becomes more personal that way. And I like it when they do it in main general directs too, when they had Yuji Horii show up with Dragon Quest. I think those kinds of moments in directs in general are really, really cool.
It's always nice for them to humanize the devs and put a face to the developer to be like,
absolutely,
human beings are making this, and also here is sometimes their cute pets in the same shot as them, and that's always fun to see.
Yeah, and I think that really is what makes it so that Indie World and Nintendo Direct partner showcases can still feel different, and why I think if they had to go with the format of they're planning to do both, but they don't have a lot, still technically keeping them as separate branding and separate things, because their formats actually do have those significant differences. And I think those differences, especially on this case of the indie world, as you all mentioned, being able to focus more on the devs of these smaller titles is something that I also really enjoy, and I think that's something that should continue for these. So I guess that's sort of going into the next question we have, which was, does this format work for you? And in this situation, yeah, in the sense of keeping them separate at the very least, I do think that was the right call.
Yeah, I do have slight worries, and I don't know if this is just how I perceived it, that the partner showcase may have overshadowed the indie announcements a little bit, like just by sticking them together. I mean, Irene, you'd said that like you found the indie world much more impressive, so that is kind of just in the eye of the beholder, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something that's interesting to me about indie presentations is that when an indie game gets enough success, it kind of becomes a brand unto itself, and then it's kind of like ascended beyond some of what they show as like the new concepts and whatnot. So you have like Balatro that was kind of in that tier. You had Pizza Tower at the end. It's just kind of funny to see those kind of like rise up to be kind of going into like what kind of used to be like the AA tier of publishing, where you have like these mid-level games between like the AAA and like the true indies and whatnot. Kind of anything from like Way Forward kind of fits into that as well, or Shovel Knight at this point as well.
Yeah, like almost there's like a celebrity tier of indie game. Yeah, kind of like the ones that have a lot of merch you can buy, or names that are going to be like seen kind of all around the place, and it does like. It almost creates like a different level of like, oh yeah, you see Balatro got there, where it's like, oh yeah, everyone's talking about Balatro, or everyone's talking about Pizza Tower. But I think for me personally, the indie world is great because especially before the direct, like the format we had this time, I actually thought was awesome because I feel like a lot of people who are going to watch a direct anyway, but maybe wouldn't watch an Indie World, probably sat down and said, well, I'll watch both. And I think that maybe put a lot of eyes on indie games that they maybe would have been skipped if it was just an Indie World by itself. Which I think is sad, that I think more people should be more open to looking at indie games, because I think indie games are where a lot of creative ideas come from nowadays. But I think putting it before the direct, I think maybe got a lot more eyes on it, and I kind of hope they do this more often going forward. Maybe they do like a smaller indie presentation before a big direct, kind of, maybe not, because this time it was 50-50. It was like 40 minutes and 20 was indie and 20 was general direct. I think maybe if they were like, okay, we'll have 10 minutes of indie and then 30 minutes of general direct, I think that going forward could be a pretty winning combination.
It's always interesting to me when they, like, just off the bat elevate an indie they have confidence into to, like, just a regular, like, general direct. Like, because they did it with Mio last direct. They did it with Celeste. Like, every now and then there's just one where it's like, it feels like Nintendo's, like, pointing, it's like, you kid, you're coming with me. And, like, bring them up to the big leagues immediately.
Do you think Nintendo has, like, a staff of people?
Curve.
Do you think Nintendo has like a staff of people who like their whole job is to like look at every indie game coming through like the certification queue, and they go like, that one, take that one out, that one's direct worthy? And like,
yeah, yes, absolutely.
Like I bet they have like a crack team of like, and they got to be experts, they got to nail it, because the moment they highlight an indie game that maybe doesn't hit, it's like, well, but every time it's like, yeah, Celeste, that was the game to pull out because that game is incredible. Or like, you know, that kind of like, Mio looks incredible as well, like you said in the last direct. The game's not out yet, we'll see, but like, they have a pretty good eye for like, we're gonna pluck this one out of the indie queue and maybe put this one in a full show because it looks awesome.
I thought it was hilarious that like 3-4 years ago, when an indie world will come out, people in chat will be like, where's Silksong? Where's Silksong? Where's Silksong? Whereas 2 or 1 year ago, now people are going in general directs and be like, where's Silksong? Where's Silksong? Where's Silksong? So Silksong is a good example of that kind of elevation from like, okay, this was, Hollow Knight DLC, E3 2019, yeah, cool game coming out, and now it's like this, it has gone this huge like elevation curve right up to like massive, to say, video game celebrity status.
I think at this point, Silksong's got to be like, Nintendo's going to come out and be like, here is the Silksong Direct, 40 minutes of Silksong, like dedicated to it.
I was going to say, never forget, Minecraft was an indie game. Like, it's just,
you know,
it's just how things can go. So when they did announce the partner indie showcase, I kind of took that as a tacit admission that there probably would not be a general direct before the end of the year, which I had already kind of been thinking. I just wanted to get all of your thoughts on that.
I agree.
That's my feeling too. Unless they're gonna do like a big Switch 2 showcase this year, like near the end of the year to hype up for the 2025 release date, which we still don't know when exactly it's going to come out in 2025, just that it is coming out probably in 2025. Yeah, I think that's it. This feels like sort of an admission that, hey, we don't have much to show this year. We have our slate through the end of this year, up through a little bit of the beginning of 2025, you know, that's going to be good enough to drive us through to at least February on Switch 1, and then we'll do more reveals then, you know? So really, it's going to depend, you know, the only thing that's going to depend on this is if they want to talk about Switch 2 sooner rather than later. Because if it's coming out like the end of 2025, they could talk about Switch 2 at the beginning of 2025. If it's coming out at the beginning or the middle of the year, maybe they want to talk about it sooner, you know, have at least that sort of 6-month marketing window. It's all going to depend on those factors.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think I don't consider like the like what the Switch showcase was in January of 2017 to be a direct. I think that's kind of its own thing. And yeah, I kind of the opinion that all of the first party stuff is being saved for an event like that.
I think, for me personally, I think that them shoving all of this into August, really, like they've left September suspiciously open, other than the release of Zelda later in the month. But like, by shoving everything, like the Museum Direct, the Indie World, and the partner showcase kind of into August, by leaving September open, it does have me a little suspicious that there's going to be something this month. Maybe announcing the new console, or maybe they just want to focus on Zelda. Like, honestly, at this point, it could be anything.
Yeah.
But it does leave me a little like, like, there's a big gap here. What are you doing? I do think that Volcanic, you're right, that like their lineup until January is kind of set in stone at this point. I think we have, you know, a pretty solid first party release calendar for the next 4 months or whatever, which I think is, you know, is going to last, and they can coast on that for a bit. I do think they're probably going to have 1 or 2 more first party games before the new console is out, because if you think about it, like, let's say the new console is out in March, like February is still open. We don't have a first party game for February. And I know, for example, like, you know, say what you will about rumors, but like that Fire Emblem 4 remake has been rumored forever. That's still not out or announced. Like that could be, I think, maybe early September, that could be announced in just a tweet. It's a remake. It's not the biggest release in the world, but that could be their February game. And then March is going to be, maybe March is when the new console's out. Could be April. We don't know. Again, a lot of that's up in the air. But I think they have one more game announcement before the year is over. Maybe it's just a small thing for February, like a small tweet, again, like that Fire Emblem remake. But I think for general directs, we're done for the year.
I agree.
I can't believe the last Switch 1 exclusive game is going to be 1-2 Switch number 3.
Oh, yeah, let's go. 1, 2, 3 Switch.
Would they call it 1, 2, 3 Switch at that point?
Yeah.
They should.
Yeah.
What if they go in like and surprise everyone, and they have like a November direct where it's like here's a Prime 4 Deep Dive, here's the next 3D Mario, here's the first look at the next 3D Zelda, here's the Fire Emblem remake, and then when the Switch 2 showcase comes around, it has one game, and that's 1, 2, 3 Switch.
I'm going to invest in Nintendo because the stock price is going to go through the roof, baby.
Yes.
And we still won't have it. And we still won't have an ARMS 2.
As people know, the West gets slightly different directs than Japan does.
Yes.
And there were a few announcements, but there was a certain announcement in the Japanese direct that was not included in the Western direct, and that was that they're releasing Tokimeki Memorial Forever With You Emotional as a kind of remaster of the original Tokimeki Memorial game, and that is enormous. And if this had been in the English direct, Tokimeki Memorial on Switch, Famiboards Discussion Club, episode whatever, it's not, there'd be a giant Shiori Fujisaki on the thumbnail, but unfortunately it doesn't seem to have a Western release as of what we know right now. But I did kind of want to take a moment to get everyone's thoughts on that, to maybe just flip out a bit.
I have a lot of thoughts.
Okay, good.
I have a lot of thoughts on this. So, okay. If anybody is listening to this and thinking to themselves, why are they making a big deal out of this remake of this, was originally PC Engine, dating sim?
Yeah, I believe so.
Go watch the action button review for this game. It's 6 hours long, and it's one of the greatest videos you'll ever watch. This game is like monumentally historically important. This game is an incredible piece of video game design. It's an incredible piece of interactive fiction. It kind of is like a Rosetta Stone for a lot of visual novel and dating sims going forward. I think it's historically important, and you know, it's a game of such monumental importance that I'm a little sad that there's no US release or English release announced yet. That said, I can still see one happening. If you look, that Tim Rogers video, it has, probably over 1 million views at this point. And
it has way more. I'm going to look that up.
Yeah.
I think it's like almost like, I think it's like 8 million or something.
Please go look. I gotta know.
I'm looking it up.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead.
So let's say it's got, let's just, lowball, let's say it's got 2 million views. It's
got 1.6, sorry.
Okay, 1.6. You know what? Perfect. So let's say it's got 1.6 million views. I don't think if anybody's watched that whole video, let's assume everybody has watched that whole video of those 1.6 million. They probably haven't, but let's say they have. I think that 800,000 people, half of that number, after watching that video, would probably buy that game purely out of curiosity and the praise that video sings about that game. I think you'd be hard pressed to not feel the need to try it for yourself. So let's say half of the people who watch that video feel that way. That's 800,000 copies they could potentially sell. And all they need to do is localize it, which is, it's not cheap, but it's not the most expensive venture in the world. So the optimist in me thinks, yeah, this wasn't in the North American Direct, probably because it doesn't hold the same water, it doesn't hold that same weight to English speakers as maybe it would in Japan. But I have hope that that game is going to get translated into English. There's no signs for that. This is raw optimism coming out of my soul.
I'm there with you.
But like, if there's going to be a Tokimemo game to come out in English, this is going to be the one. And I think, honestly, if that Tim Rogers video, if that action button review didn't happen, I don't think I'd be saying this. But after that video, like that video is the best marketing they could possibly ask for an English release of this game. So I think they do it. I hope they do it. I'm optimistic, but I hope they do it.
So we'll get the Tokimeki Memorial Direct, and it'll just be a re-upload of the Tim Rogers video with a new intro and ending. It's perfect.
It's gonna be the Tim Rogers video, but it's all dubbed over in the Nintendo Direct announcer voice.
No.
So, my thoughts on this, like, I think it's unfortunate that there's a belief that, like, the Western audience can only appreciate this kind of game through a lens of irony.
Yeah.
So, like, we had, like, the Date Everything game in the thing, which is funny and whatnot. And then you have, like, games like Had to Know a Boyfriend and stuff like that with, like, the pigeons and all of that. And it's like, I want to see the genuine thing. I want to see the sincere version of this because we've just never really gotten the chance to do it. Because, like, again, this is kind of things you'll see in the Tim Rogers review. But this is a, like, at the time, AAA Konami game with all the resources and, like, care and attention that its contemporary Castlevania's got.
Yeah.
And I want to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there, like you said, there's a sincerity to this game. It's not like the one where you date birds, or even games that are, like, not jokey. Like, what is it, Doki Doki Literature Club? Like, that game is, it's based on dating. It's a dating sim, but, right? It's always like, it's a dating sim, but they're birds. Or it's a dating sim, but it has a dark twist. Or it's a dating sim, but you're dating your dishwasher. And it's like, this is the game where it says it's a dating sim. And I think, yeah, like, it was at the time a big AAA, big important video game. And it'd be nice for North America to get a taste of the genuine article.
Yeah, and, like, the funny thing is, like, romance and whatnot, that element has become huge in, like, just, like, a bunch of games in, like, with a non-ironic element.
Yeah.
Everything from Stardew Valley to Persona to friggin' Mass Effect. Like, it's all in there. People clearly aren't repulsed by this. A lot of people see it as something they want to see. So why not just give us the game that does that?
Yep, I wholeheartedly agree. No, I think, again, I'm optimistic. I think it might not get the biggest marketing push in the world from Konami themselves, but I think it happens, and I bet it does better for Konami than they think it will.
I agree. And I am considering getting this game anyway with my, like, only basic knowledge of very basic Japanese phrases and just pulling up whatever translation tools I can and just trying to power through it, even if it doesn't get an English release.
I've dabbled. I've learned. I've taken Japanese classes, and I'm not great in the language, but I've got a little bit of conversational ability. And
same.
It's the Japanese in Tokimemo is not hard Japanese, right? It's they speak in pretty simple phrases. The language is not super complex. And if you're want to learn Japanese, this maybe isn't a bad game to pick up for language practice reasons.
Yeah, and, like, I mean, I did, like, Duolingo for a couple years. I've got some, again, conversational stuff, but I feel like this would be, like, actual motivation to, like, conversationally learn.
I feel that.
Does anybody else have any thoughts on this? Maybe this is just, like, weirdly significant just because of how much I love the Tim Rogers video and, like, how much I see the potential in it. So, but I did want to at least set aside time for us to talk about it a little bit.
I get it.
Yeah, I think that Tim Rogers video actually, yeah, like I said, it's the best marketing Konami could have asked for if they were to release this in North America, because it's 6 hours long. It's a lot, but it's clearly a popular video. And I don't think you can come away from that video not thinking that Tokimemo is an important, great video game. So, here's hoping, man. I keep my fingers crossed. I hope Konami sees the light and puts that game out in English.
All right, so let's talk about the main event. Let's talk about Yakuza.
The reason I'm here.
The reason you're here, just here's your runway. Sell us on the game and the series. Go for it.
All right, hold on. Let me get a sip of water.
Okay, get your notes.
Let me get my notes. Let me get my sip of water here.
Good.
All right.
Hydrate.
I gotta hydrate. This game's pretty good. Y'all should play it. All right, that's all I got. Now,
okay, great.
For people who have spent any significant time on Famiboards, they know they have probably heard this from me already, but I'm going to repeat it anyway.
Great.
Yakuza means a lot to me. Yakuza is my favorite video game franchise of all time, and the Nintendo Switch is my favorite console of all time. And I have wanted desperately since the launch of the Switch for the two to meet. And it has taken almost 8 years, but it's finally happening. Yakuza Kiwami, a remake of the first game, is coming to Nintendo Switch. It's coming out October 24th. It seems like it's going to be $20 US, which is a great price. And it's eShop only. No physical release yet, though I'm sure Limited Run or someone will make something happen at some point, because Yakuza fans love to support the Yakuza franchise, myself included, and I'm sure a physical release would do just fine. Let me just gush about this series and this video game for a minute. I'll start with this. Yes, you can start the series with this game. This is a great jumping on point. It's perfectly fine. You don't need to know anything going in. This is a totally adequate place to get into the franchise. You're not missing anything by not having played Zero. This is a remake of the very first game. Obviously, it's going to be a great introduction to the characters, the world, all that. It is the Yakuza franchise is a series of a lot. It's spinning a lot of plates and doing so very well. It's a drama. It's a crime drama. It's this big epic crime drama narrative about the Japanese underworld and these crime families and different syndicates fighting for supremacy in Japan. But at the same time, it's goofy, it's silly, it doesn't take itself seriously, and it balances that tone perfectly. And I think Kiwami is going to be a great showcase of the seriousness versus the hilarity. You're going to have moments where significant characters are pouring their heart out as they're dying, and then 5 minutes later, you're racing slot cars against children, and then a moment later, you're hearing about some sad story of somebody whose life is ruined, and you're trying to help them, and then the very next moment, you're playing Japanese mahjong because that's something you want to do, and it balances the tone so perfectly. I think for me, the thing about this that I want to bring up is, okay, I own this series on both PlayStation and Xbox. I've bought basically every game multiple times, but I'm so excited that this is coming to Switch, because for me, I've always felt this series would be extremely at home on Switch. Like I was saying, the game balances things like epic crime drama with big cinematic cutscenes, with, mini games and side activities. And I think the on-the-go nature of the Switch, where you can take it out of the dock and take it with you, it's going to match the game so well, because you're going to be able to pick it up and lie in bed and play a couple of hands of mahjong, or go to the, casino and do a bit of gambling, or play the slot car mini game, or do whatever. And then you can put it in the dock and put it on your big TV and watch those big cinematic cutscenes and watch the drama and the story unfold on your TV. And then you can take it out and, do some more side activities. And it's going to match the game perfectly well. I'm rambling. I'm excited. If you couldn't tell.
You're fine. This is fascinating.
I'm so excited for this. I'm so excited. I shouted with happiness when this happened. My partner was afraid I was going to alert the neighbors with how loud I was.
I guess I'm curious. Irene or VolcanicDynamo, have either of you have played any of the Yakuza series?
Nope. Oops.
How dare you?
Yakuza is staring at me from the Game Pass game selection screen, and it's looking very intriguing to me.
I'll say, yeah, I am almost certainly going to get this when it releases, and played my first Yakuza game, and yeah, you've definitely sold. I was probably already sold on it, but you've definitely sold it on me. But it's just really cool to hear just like that kind of like passion and appreciation for just a series that's someone's favorite series. That was like that was great.
I cannot recommend the franchise enough. Even if it's like, I don't think it's going to click with everybody. I don't think everybody's going to turn into the passionate fan that I am for this series. But especially at $20 US, like, it's not a big asking price. All I ask is for people to give it a shot, look into it, see if it's for them, maybe buy it, try it. If it's not for you, that's fine as long as you've given it a shot. But I cannot recommend the franchise enough. And again, I think this being a remake of the first game it's a perfect jumping on point. You don't need to know anything going in. You don't need to, have any prior knowledge or who the characters are or anything like that. You can go in as fresh as possible and you're going to have a fantastic time.
Yeah, so what's striking me as intriguing about Yakuza is that the premise actually with like Japanese Yakuza life and Gangster life is not immediately appealing to me. Like, I don't know, the premise doesn't click with me. But then I think that there's a lot of games where even if the premise doesn't click with you, it can still resonate with you. Because would you say that Yakuza is not for you as a fan of the setting? Yakuza is for you that is a fan of storytelling?
Yeah, I think so. It is a crime drama through and through. Like, the bones of it are based on crime drama. But it's so much so I like crime drama, but I'll tell you that, like, as a crime drama, it's not really entirely that. It's so much more.
Okay, yeah.
Because, like, yeah, if you're not a fan of crime drama, I'd say try it anyway, because it really is a story about the characters, about Kiryu as a person, how he reacts to his environment, how he treats other people, how he navigates in the world that he's in. I think if you really like strong characters, you're going to have a great time with this, even if you're not a fan of crime drama as a genre.
That's really cool to hear.
The parallels I see that, like, it seems most closely like, say, Grand Theft Auto, which is also steeped in, like, mafia, cartels, gangs and stuff like that, and then also has, like, this very big free-form do-what-you-want element to it.
I think Grand Theft Auto, like, a lot of Yakuza fans will try to, like, snub any comparisons to Grand Theft Auto because, like, it's not Grand Theft Auto. You're not stealing cars. You can't beat up civilians. Yeah. But I actually don't think GTA's a bad comparison point if you look at GTA as a playable crime drama that sometimes gets goofy. Like, GTA is a game where, now, I'm not the biggest GTA fan in the world, but, it does balance somewhat serious storytelling with comedy that stems from silly situations that characters find themselves in. Now, I think GTA has a real air of sarcasm to it. It's like, making fun of America as a place, which is fine to do, sure. But, like, it has a real cynicism to it, where Yakuza is extremely earnest. Yakuza is extremely, like, Kiryu is such an earnest, sincere person. There's not a shred of sarcasm in his body. And that comes through in not only his character, but the writing of the franchise as a whole, and the storylines there. It's not like, it doesn't have that, like, turning its nose up at certain people. Like, no, it's very sincere. It's very genuine to its core about how Kiryu as a character sees the world, and that comes through in the story.
So it's kind of interesting. I know that the creative leader, whoever, had said that they didn't believe the Switch, like, really had the audience for Yakuza. I know that, so, like, how kind of significant is it for it to come, and what do you think that kind of means for the future of the series? Is it something of, like, a symbolic victory just for third-party support in general?
I think this happening, we'll never know the behind the scenes. Like, okay, so for full disclosure, this is coming out on October 24th, which is the same day the Amazon Prime show comes out, which is a show based on the first Yakuza game. So it's going to be telling more or less the same story. So this release could very well have just been Sega saying, we want this for marketing reasons. Or it could have been Nintendo coming to Sega with a stack of cash saying, put your game out on our system. Or it could be the guys at RGG Studio said, you know what? Maybe we should actually give the Nintendo Switch a shot here. Because you're right, the studio director, head of studio, I don't remember his exact title, Yokoyama-san, has gone on record of saying, and I don't have the exact quote here in front of me, but something along the lines of, our game is of, the phrase he uses, like, is of the night world, and the Switch is not of that world. And to see the Yakuza games in the same lineup as some of other Switch titles maybe doesn't feel great. Which is, to paraphrase, the Switch has a younger target demographic, and the Yakuza games tend to be a little more mature. Which, do go look at the eShop. Every other game has like half-naked anime girls in it. I don't know what he's talking about, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I don't know if he saw, maybe reconsidered and saw the light and said, yeah, we'll try the Switch anyway. Or if, somebody came to him and said, you're putting this out, or here's money, put it out. I do see it as a victory. I do. I really do. I think that this game coming out really... The Yakuza franchise was kind of the last Japanese third-party video game entity that felt missing on Switch. To me personally, at least. I mean, obviously, I'm a huge Yakuza fan, so I'm a little biased, but... you've got Dragon Quest games on there, you've got Final Fantasy, you've got, a lot of Japanese third-party games coming to Switch, because obviously the Switch is the biggest console over there, but Yakuza's always been kind of a standout omission, and for them to finally fill in that gap, I personally take that as not only a huge win for the Switch itself, but a really good sign for the Switch 2, or whatever the next console is, that at the start, everybody's going to be there. Nobody's going to miss out, because I think a lot of developers skipped on the Switch because the Wii U wasn't the biggest thing in the world, and they looked at the Switch and like, do we want to risk pouring development time into games for this when it might not hit? And then it hit, and I think a lot of developers are regretting not being there, and I think that this is a really good sign that they do regret it, and that the Switch 2 is going to have all of that support at launch, and that's going to be great. And I actually think that with this, I think we're going to see, maybe not on the current Switch, which I can get into this in a second, but I don't think we'll see the rest of the Yakuza games on the current Switch, mostly because some of the Yakuza games are not going to be able to run there because of engine changes or whatever. But I think once the Switch 2 comes out, I think you were going to see all 1,800 Yakuza games, however many there are, there's a lot. I think you're going to see all of them released in pretty short order. And I am going to buy them all again a third time.
I can't believe you're going to be funding each and every Yakuza port.
Oh my goodness. If the Switch had the ability to gift games through the eShop, which I really wish it did, I would probably end up paying for Yakuza Kiwami a lot and gifting a lot of copies to a lot of my friends, because I'm just that kind of person.
Incredible.
Nice.
I mean, it's only $20. Like, what's $20?
Yeah, that's true.
I'd be like, hey, it's your birthday. Here's Yakuza Kiwami. Or hey, here's a reason to give you a gift. Here's Yakuza Kiwami. But obviously I can't do that. I do want to say real quick, on the topic of other games coming, a lot of people have kind of said, hey, why not Zero? Zero is kind of the game everybody assumed, including myself, I assumed would come first. I do want to address that really quickly. The short version is that new show is coming out. It's based on Yakuza 1. This is a remake of Yakuza 1. I think marketing-wise, that just makes sense. That said, we're going to get Zero. I'd put money on us getting Zero, and the reason for that is Yakuza Kiwami and Zero share a lot of the same code. Kiwami, in a lot of ways, it came out after Zero originally, and Kiwami, in a lot of ways, feels almost like an expansion on top of Zero. It uses the same combat mechanics, the same engine. A lot of the same elements from Zero are in Kiwami. I don't know game development. I'm not a game developer, but I have to assume with a lot of the port work done for Kiwami, a port of Zero would be, again, I'm not a developer, but I have to assume that compared to a lot of other ports, it would be trivially easy for them to get that one out too. So I have to assume Zero's coming at some point. Kiwami 2 onwards? Probably not, because Kiwami 2 is the first, chronologically speaking, the first game that uses their Dragon engine, and that struggled a bit on PS4, so I don't think that'll be on Switch, but maybe the next hardware, we'll see.
Okay. Any other final thoughts about Yakuza? Just anything we need to know?
I think the games are really good. if I haven't made that clear,
Okay.
I have, and I think Kiwami is a good place to start because I don't think it's the greatest one in the franchise. It's good. Don't get me wrong. It's a good game, but sometimes I'll tell people to start with Zero, and part of me does feel a little bad when I do because I also happen to think Zero is, in my opinion, maybe the best one in the franchise. If not, it's definitely up there. With Kiwami, that's a really good place to start because not only do you go in and get a good feel for the franchise and how it kind of tells its story and its gameplay, and you can see if you like it, but the highs of the franchise are still waiting for you. And so you can play Kiwami and go, oh, I really like this. And then you get to go, well, Zero, the one that Derachi won't stop talking about being the greatest game of all time, I get to play that one next. And then, you're not at the highs of the franchise yet. But again, still a pretty great game. And I think for $20 US, it's a really good value, and I can't recommend it enough.
Awesome. Okay. So I hope people aren't yet tired of hearing us talk about Echoes of Wisdom, but there was another Echoes of Wisdom deep dive, and so we kind of want to touch on that.
Yippee!
Which, the funny thing is, last time we talked about this game, we were kind of left with some questions, and this new one actually kind of just directly, immediately answered them. So we know what the still world is now. It seems to be kind of like this void dimension that pulls in people and objects. So it does seem to kind of be like the dark world of this game, but more segmented, maybe more similar to like the Silent Realms from Skyward Sword.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I thought about
yeah.
that too.
So that was kind of cool to see. And we also know it has the dungeons in it. So yeah, any thoughts that just came to mind about having that now detailed and kind of we know how that is and how it works?
Finally, we get to hear the D word that everyone's been looking for.
Oh yes,
Dom.
Because no, the D word.
He's showing up everywhere.
Yeah, and because just way back when Tears of the Kingdom released its gameplay deep dive, I was looking era, and in that thread, many people were like, okay, I'm not watching it, it's too spoilery, I want to discover the surprises for myself, but I want to know, did they say the word? Did they say the D word? Are there traditional dungeons in this game? I want to hear the word. And that got me really excited seeing the Echoes of Wisdom trailer, and even in the beginning tweet, they said the D word, dungeons are in this game, and I'm so happy about it. I know there were dungeons too in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, but they're not quite the same as like conventional, linear, traditional dungeons. Loving Child has many names and all of that. But I'm really excited that they hard confirmed the D word. That's really cool.
Yeah, and now with that out of the way, we can focus on the real innovation of this game, which is they made it into a platformer. Is Nintendo trying to sell this game any harder to me? Hello?
Yeah.
But I do think, on a serious note, that the idea of making the still world into these more, almost like these floating islands that require you to use your echoes, is a really great job of making the sort of Dark World equivalent feel very novel and unique compared to what would be in the light world, without just being here's the world but evil, which I mean we've done the Dark World straight up equivalent twice already. We had the Dark World, we had Low Rule, we did that exact trope. So being able to push it in a more novel and unique gameplay direction, I think makes for something that's very interesting and will give you a different angle to be using your echoes in. And I think that's gonna be a lot of fun, I think.
Something that's interesting to me regarding the potential for dungeons in this game. So part of what I guess the criticism of the Breath of the Wild Tears of the Kingdom equivalents is that because the dungeons can potentially be approached in any order, and because you kind of get your entire tool set from the beginning, the dungeons aren't really built around a specific gimmick or item like, say, they may have been in the past. The way I think they could address this, because obviously you're going to come in with your echoes and you can build like bed bridges or whatever to probably overcome a lot of things, But I'm guessing that there may be unique echoes that are found specifically in those dungeons, and that kind of becomes like the dungeon item of the dungeon.
Yeah,
and I
exactly.
think that
My thoughts as well. Yeah.
I think that'll be a cool way to kind of bridge that gap.
I think.
I also think
I agree,
that. I also think that a thought that I've been playing at is that I think there's gonna be a fairly flat difficulty curve still, because I think that the dungeons will most likely be more focused than the Breath of the Wild Tears of the Kingdom equivalent, but I still think they can be approached in any order. I don't think they're moving away from that new established convention, so to speak. But I've been thinking about like the dungeon reward to it that it will have, and that I've been playing with the thought that maybe you upgrade the try by clearing a dungeon. So the more dungeons you clear, the more complex and more amount of echoes you can produce. And that could be a way to shake up the way that dungeons are solved in both free-form ways, but also more focused ways. I think that could be an interesting concept, but we'll see about it. But that's definitely a thought that has been running through my mind.
I wonder if, either that or like maybe there's like a special echo that you get for beating the dungeon. Boss echo? I'd be a little OP.
Ooh, boss echo.
I'm thinking almost like in a more of a Mega Man sort of you beat the boss, you get their power. But I think that also sort of overlaps with the concept of a dungeon echo, so maybe that won't be the direction they go in.
Yeah. I mean, there's still so much we have to see about how this game's actually going to work, but everything that we've seen has looked really promising. I'm really excited for the dungeons, including especially since it looks like we have straight up like dungeon bosses that you can fight in traditional ways, be it through summoning echoes, throwing rocks, or as they revealed in this, Zelda can get a sword fighter form.
Yes, that's so cool.
Which I like that because it like a lot of people are like, well, why can't Zelda use a sword? Well, Zelda can now use a sword, so we can do that.
But only for a limited time.
That's not. It is only for a limited time, but I do like that the sword fighting isn't the focus, so you can still focus on like the more unique things that Zelda does that like you wouldn't do as Link in a game. But then like you can still just have that like staple sword combat. I think that's cool to actually still see in the game. I know some people were worried that like you that you would maybe take the form of like Link or something to fight, and that would be disappointing. So I think this is better.
Yeah. I mean, she does get the outfit. She gets the cute little tunic and the cute little hat. But I think it's a good balance in the sense that, if you want to be using this more OP, more direct power, you gotta go into the more difficult still world areas in order to keep it charged up. So there's I think there's a good balance there where you can take on the power as needed, maybe blitz it for like a boss, for example, but you still got to rely more on the echo mechanic. This is more you filled up your super meter and you're unleashing a super powerful attack kind of thing. And I think that's kind of neat. One thing that the trailer showed for that they didn't really go too deeply into is the fact that the meter has a level. So I'm wondering if it's one of those things where you'll be able to level up the meter either through finding certain items a la heart, a la piece of heart or heart containers, or if there's certain milestones you'll reach in the game where, you'll level it up, and now that just means maybe you can use the meter for longer, or the meter depletes slower, one of those kind of things.
Or maybe you do more damage.
Or that, upgrade your power.
It's interesting. I think the sword fighter form. When I first saw the trailer, my first thought was like, this is kind of almost an equivalent to the Master Sword in Breath and Tears, where it's like this thing you have when you need it in a pinch, and like it has a recharge. Now, obviously, the Master Sword is on a timer. When it depletes, you have to wait however long for it to recharge. And this is you have to go get a resource for it. But to me, it almost seems like in a pinch, I need to do damage. Sword time.
Yeah,
and I think that's cool. I think it's going to make sure the player is never stuck, if that makes any sense. This game it looks so interesting. I'm so excited for this game because to me, it's like they sat down and thought, what can we do to make Zelda new, unique, different in like a 2D sense? Like, we don't want to just do another 2D Zelda game. What can we do different? And the whole like Echoes mechanic, I'm so excited to see the possibilities there. Like, I look at that and I'm thinking to myself, like, oh, there's going to be so many, like, to be honest, there's going to be so many cool, like, speed run things or, like, weird combination things. Like, and that's, I think, almost as exciting to me as the game itself, is to see what other people do with it. And Tears of the Kingdom had the same concept, where it's like, oh, I'm looking at it like, yeah, I could build a car, but I'm more excited to see people posting videos on, social media of they built a Gundam, or they built a Metal Gear, and in this game it's going to be like, oh, I can't wait for the speed run that's like bed %, like only beds, or like only trees, or you know what I mean? Like, I'm so excited to see how people approach this game.
100%.
So they showed this like in one of the like little boss fights they previewed, but it's hilarious to me that like Zelda can summon a bed and recover during a boss fight.
Yeah,
like,
that's so funny.
That's hilarious.
They're totally leading into the bed gimmick in the trailers, and I'm there for it. I'm there for it.
It's so funny just to see, like, yeah, let's take a nap. Summon a guy and sleep.
I was replaying Link's Awakening on Switch the other day, and I have to say that I am of the opinion that the traditional 2D Zelda formula has sort of run its course. I think A Link Between Worlds did some shakeups with Dungeons in Any Order and the renting system. But when I played Skyward Sword, I was less tired of the 3D Zelda formula than I was tired of the 2D Zelda formula after Link Between Worlds. So I almost think that 2D Zelda was just as much in need of a significant shakeup than 3D Zelda was. And I think Echoes of Wisdom is such a shakeup that it's like can't be overstated how much of a it's going to revitalize. It's the Breath of the Wild moment of 2D Zelda, and I think that's the best possible news we could ever wish for when it comes to 2D Zelda, really.
I think if I'm allowed to be just a shred skeptical, again, I think the game looks incredible and it looks like a lot of fun. My one worry. So, did any of you all play the DS game Scribblenauts?
Yes, I have.
A little bit.
So,
yeah, I have.
I loved that game because it was so creative, but I found my problem with that game was I tended to use the same solution for a lot of the puzzles. And I'm a little bit worried that with Echoes of Wisdom, it's going to end up being something similar where, like, oh, I need to get up this mountain, I'm going to place beds. Or I need to get up here, I'll place water and swim. And it's going to be the same solutions over and over. Am I the only one with that worry, or you all can see where I'm going?
I get that.
It's going to have the hover bike problem from Tears of the Kingdom, basically.
Yeah, where it's like, oh, there's kind of the one-size-fits-all solution to at least maybe the navigation puzzles of, like, how do I get up this cliff? Well, put water blocks and swim, or, like, put beds and climb up. And I hope the game does enough to make the player come up with new creative solutions instead of just relying on the same, like you said, the hover bike problem of, like, here's the one thing you need, who cares?
Yeah, in defense of the hover bike, I only really used it to get all of the light routes in Tears of the Kingdom. But yeah, I know a lot of people abused that. It was still cool though. I liked having a little air bike.
It's cool. It's just like I'm with Echo specifically. Like I'm a little like I hope it's not just beds all the time. Like I hope beds don't solve every problem. As funny as it would be to just put beds all over Hyrule, but.
What if the dungeon items are just bigger beds? Like, you start with, like, a twin bed, and then you get, like, a queen, a king, a full, like...
California king.
Yeah. Alright. So something, they are showing off, seemingly, that there's going to be, like, a lot of people in Hyrule that have kind of, like, unique things they can offer you, and one of them was, like, returning character Dampe, who at this point seems to be becoming one of the more recurring Zelda NPCs. Like, he's kind of getting to, like, Beetle status, almost. Which is funny to me because he's Dampe the Gravekeeper from Ocarina of Time. But, yeah, he can now create, like, the automatons, which you've seen a little bit in previous stuff, but apparently that's on him. So And that's apparently a big enough mechanic that it does seem mapped to one of the D-pad buttons like Sword Fighter and Echo Mode is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just kind of interesting to see what they'll come up with that. I could see like there being like collecting schematics or materials or stuff to build that. Again, the game's just kind of like unveiling new systems, which is cool to see.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Yeah. It feels like there's going to be like depth and like there's a lot more to this than it's just another 2D Zelda. It's going to be like, no, this is like a 2D Zelda with a lot going on, and I'm really excited to see kind of all those systems playing with each other.
Yeah, very exciting stuff.
I'm really wondering how the automatons are gonna differ from Echoes, because first I was like, okay, why are you making an automaton when you can just make an Echo? You know, if you have a Tektite Echo, why would you make a Tektite automaton? But it really makes me wonder how that automatons will differ from summoning Echoes, if they have like special abilities that Echoes don't have, or if they simply are automatons out of things that are not Echoes. So kind of like how bind and reverse bond are like two sides of the same ability. I think the automatons and Echo are also going to be two sides of the same ability. In a way. They're similar but also not really.
It seems like it would be redundant, but have they shown that you're able to make Echoes out of automatons?
Maybe they are. Maybe that's a limitation, you know?
Yeah.
Because I would assume the automatons don't use up like the try resource.
Yeah.
So that's like one instance I could see of them being more useful or like having a different function.
Yeah.
I also think
maybe that's my
like
immediate assumption.
My other thought was like maybe the Echoes have like they can only like you summon them, but they're only around for so long. But maybe the automatons are a little more like a permanent buddy who hangs out with you for however long. Like maybe they have a little bit more longevity, a little more health or whatever.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that the automatons might be, while the Echoes are effectively an unlimited resource that you could just resummon. I'm imagining that maybe the automatons maybe they're not. They're more single use, or you have to actively stock up on them. So you won't run out of an Echo, but you can run out of an automaton, but they make up for it by the automaton having these sort of unique or different effects, or, as was mentioned before, being able to use them alongside the other stuff. I think that could be an interesting way to sort of differentiate them.
So at the end of the trailer, they kind of drop two, like, I want to say hooks to big surprises or whatever, of just like content that's in the game. They're a little bit spoilery, so if you've been avoiding spoilers, just I would say skip to the end of the segment. But yeah, they straight up just showed Volvagia's returning, which was really cool to see, and then they showed what seemed to be like a possessed or evil or Echo Link. It wasn't really clear, but yeah, just kind of thoughts on those kind of like hooks at the end.
That was really really cool. Yeah, I was so into it.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have some really fun boss fights. And this is a good start to showing that off.
I was really happy to see Volvagia again, because like this is a really cool design. It always has been, like even on the N64. Even further back, if you subscribe, that Volvagia is the same thing as like Barba from Zelda 2.
Yeah, I love that kind of like boss recycling, as they did with Gleox in Tears of the Kingdom, where they just like take it. I mean, this is like Gleox from Tears of the Tears of the Kingdom was like a massive upgrade, so to speak. This is like a side grade, more of a side grade than an upgrade. But yeah, boss returns, so to speak, is like one of the most welcoming Zelda recycling you can possibly do, because yeah, I was totally into it, and I didn't quite catch the evil Echo Link in the trailer. I was too busy like mulling over all of the hype stuff that I sort of like can't quite recall. Evil Echo Link, what was that about?
I mean, I think it's like just something that we probably would have guessed would be in the game, but they just like ended the trailer by showing just like Link really quickly, and he had like evil red eyes, and he was about to fight Zelda.
Yeah. Oh shit!
Yeah, and like that's not surprising to me. Volvagia was surprising to me. But I mean, any other thoughts about this game or anything shown off?
I think my one thought and I tend to have this thought a lot because this is how my brain works, is I look at this game and Zelda being able to bring in like beds and stuff, and I can't help but think like, okay, so in the next Super Smash Brothers, is Zelda's like down B going to be bringing a bed?
Oh my gosh.
I love that. That would be more relevant to the series probably than the Phantom Suit.
Yeah, like just press down B and Zelda, even if it's not like cartoony little toy Zelda, it's just like bed.
It'd be a great taunt.
Yeah. Oh, that would also be good. Just like bring them to bed, just sleep on it for like a second or two, and then get up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'd love that. Right. So I think we're going to go ahead and go into some more community questions we had to end off for today. All right, so let's go ahead and start with one from Cyberwolf Bia, who asks, have any of you tried the Epic Mickey Remaster demo? Looks like she's been sharing her impressions, is pretty excited about it. So I'll just start with that. Have any of you played it?
I have not.
Yeah, I have not had a chance to, but I'm curious to at least try it. I played the original Epic Mickey on the Wii, and I really wanted to like it, but I think a lot of the minor flaws, like with the controls and the camera and the pacing, really kept me from like really deep diving into it beyond playing more than just a couple hours. The changes that seem to be coming to play for the remaster feel really intriguing, and I'm curious to see them play out. I wonder if I'll end up trying the demo on the Switch or if I'll try it on PC or PS5 though, because I hear there's like a couple of technical quirks that they still need to work. Well, not technical quirks that need to work out, but I think there might be, especially in compared to handheld mode, I think the performance might be more stable or better on the more powerful systems. So that's just something I'm keeping in mind.
I think Epic Mickey it's part of a really interesting subset of games that I like to call the collection, the secret club of Wii games, where you have Epic Mickey, you have like Mad World and Pandora's Tower and what's the last story on
Zack
Wii?
and Wiki.
No, Zack and Wiki?
Yeah, Zack and Wiki too. Absolutely. Just the Wii games.
The Wii had hits, man. The Wii has some pretty solid games in there that, like, if you really look past a lot of the minigame collections and whatever else, there's some bangers. There's some bangers on that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, but I haven't played the demo actually, but I remember reading reviews about Epic Mickey back in the day, and it looked like a really cool take on the character, like not your typical Disney Shulabalahoo game, but like something more sincere, so to speak.
I've played a little bit of Epic Mickey on the Wii as well, but it didn't really hook me. I remember seeing the like concept art where you had like, if Mickey like just chooses to destroy things with paint thinner, you get like weird messed up versions of things, and they had like weird messed up robot Goofy and like crazy stuff like that. And I don't know how much of that translates into the final game. I'd heard not as much as people had hoped. But I am willing to monitor like kind of the reception of this and give it another try if it looks good. Also kind of wanted to give a shout out to it was one of Jason Schreier's book. I don't remember which one, but he talked a bit about Epic Mickey and like Warren Spector's involvement and stuff, and that's also pretty interesting.
The one thing also, so I never played the original. I'm not the biggest like Mickey Mouse guy or whatever, but my lasting memory about the original release of Epic Mickey was when the game was showcased on Nintendo's E3 stage show, and Reggie Fils-Aimé introduced it as Disney's Epic Disney.
Oh.
And for some reason, him saying Disney's Epic Disney is like the one thing that comes to mind when I think about that game.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
And then she also had a kind of a follow-up question, which was of the Capcom fighting games that have been announced, or if there was going to be a Capcom Fighting Collection 3, what game should be in it, with the suggestion that one should definitely be Street Fighter the movie, the game, which I absolutely agree with.
I agree. That one's going to be hard because you probably have to go get all those actors' likenesses and stuff. But I totally agree. I think my main, the one like Capcom Collection, which I guess would not technically be a Capcom collection. I'd love to see the Street Fighter EX games, the Arika 3D ones. Arika was the developer behind them. Because I like Skullomania. I think Skullomania is a fun character, and it'd be nice to see him on modern console. I feel like no one else has played the Street Fighter EX games, and that's fine. They're not that great, but they're pretty good.
I've played a little Street Fighter. I guess my only other suggestion would be when the Switch debuted, it had like Street Fighter 2, I think the Final Challengers, with new characters. So I don't think that's really moving much anymore. So just throw that in there too.
What a weird release that was. They had like one new character, and it was like
Evil Ken. I think
Violent Ken, I think was his name.
Violent Ken,
which is hilarious.
Uh-huh.
But I think for me, as something of a fighting game fan, the Street Fighter EX games, I'd like to see those. The movie, you know what? I would like to see Street Fighter the movie because it's not a bad game. And the last one for me is there's a couple of Capcom fighting games that are not Street Fighter that have not made their way over yet. The one I think about is Rival Schools. They have Project Justice, which I think is a sequel to Rival Schools in the current or the new collection. But Rival Schools, the original game, I don't think is out on modern consoles in any way. And it'd be cool to see that one again.
Nice. Alright, so we have a less of a question, more of a request from Metroid, who is requesting, since Irene had willed Metroid Prime 4 into existence, when you'd last asked about it, will we see Fire Emblem 4 Remake released next year? So, Irene, this one's all yours.
Okay, and for this question, I've actually prepared a summoning chant.
Okay, great.
To will Fire Emblem 4 into existence. So, coming to your door. Fire Emblem 4. So much lore. Fire Emblem 4. Remake my front door. Remake a golfer's 4. Remake more. Remake Fire Emblem 4. Coming in the next direct. Coming and we'll get wrecked. Coming to your door. Coming Fire Emblem 4.
All right, Irene, if that works, I'm gonna commission one of these for Yakuza 0 for Nintendo Switch. So if that works,
go ahead.
If that works, I'm coming back to you. I'm gonna say I need one of these for Yakuza 0.
When are we getting the Bandcamp drop? When are we getting the Bandcamp drop?
Something's just been put out into the universe, and I'm curious to see how the universe responds.
I mean, I think it's gonna. I think after that, it's a guarantee. It's coming out. I'm going to say February or maybe March. Yeah, that's my.
It's going to be the designated February game.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, listen.
It's decided now.
You can't spell February without F and E.
That's true.
Hello.
And February is the second month, and 2 2s is 4.
Precisely. And you know what?
Right.
What if it comes out on February 4th? I don't know what day of the week that is, but if it's a Thursday,
that'd be perfect.
Just saying, writes itself. Nintendo, cut the check.
Yeah.
I hate to inform you, it's going to be on a Tuesday.
Games can come out on Tuesdays. Will
Nintendo games come out on Tuesdays?
No,
but this is what we can still fix this. It'll come out on February 20th. 2 + 2.
There you go.
Oh, love it. I love it.
It's all numbers.
Yeah. Follow the numbers. Follow the money. It all makes sense.
All right, and we have one last question from Shop Troll.
All right.
Who says, what do you all make of Square Enix's push for the Saga games in the West? Has their time finally come with PC-style RPGs being more popular on console, or are they trying to make fetch happen?
I think the Saga... Okay, this is a great question. I think the push for the Saga games is a symptom of... Not a symptom, that sounds like a bad thing, but like a result of just the market. And what I mean by that is... I bet Square Enix's push for those games stems from it's their business, right? And it's all numbers. And I bet they look at the numbers and they see, well, if we develop this game, it'll sell enough in Japan to warrant the development cost. So the development cost is going to make a profit. And then they probably look and say, well, to translate these into English, it wouldn't cost that much and would probably sell, it'll cost X and we'll make Y, and Y is bigger than X. So let's just do it. And I bet that because the Switch is so popular and people like to buy games on Switch, as a result, the Saga games continue to make a profit and Square Enix continues to see this as a profitable venture and they keep doing it. And I think that's great for everybody involved. fans, new people come into the franchise, therefore it gets the push, and I bet Square Enix is happy with the result.
Yeah, the thing I'm kind of thinking that it reminds me of is maybe like the Mana series, which also seems like it's kind of gotten these, not necessarily huge budget, but like small, like they've kind of been pushing that the Switch generation, so I could see the Saga games kind of being like the next in line to kind of have that pattern of releases.
I think if you look at the numbers, like in Japan, like Switch software sells a lot in Japan. Japanese people, they love, not to generalize the whole country, but like the Japanese market clearly likes to purchase software on Nintendo Switch. That is just a numerical fact. You can look at it and see it. And I think as a result, you see especially a lot of Japanese companies like Square Enix, and just they see that, they have dollar signs, or I guess yen signs in their eyes, and they go, all right, well, Saga is going to cost this. We're going to make this. Green light, let's go. Like, we got these developers, they want to do it. We want the money. Let's make it happen. And then after all that happens, they go, English translation would only cost X, and I bet we'd probably make Y. Let's make it happen.
All right. Any other thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I think this recording went really well.
I wanna thank y'all for having me on for to scream about Yakuza for how long was I going for? Like 20 minutes?
Of course.
Yeah, as long as needed.
Yeah, listen, I I was holding back. I'll say I could have kept going, but I am really happy you guys y'all brought me on, and I appreciate the opportunity to spread the good word of Yakuza, and I genuinely hope folks give it a shot when Kiwami drops next month.
So that'll do it for today's discussion. I'd like to thank my fellow Discussion Club members for their participation today, including those of you who sent us questions. If you're interested in continuing the discussion or sending us questions of your own, please be sure to find this podcast companion thread on Famiboards.com. And if you enjoyed the episode, please be sure to review it or leave us some feedback. We're on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. Or share this episode with someone you think would enjoy it. It'll help the podcast grow. Thanks again, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Happy September!